All right, welcome back, everybody who is still here, still with us at the very end of Thursday, our day of talks. Really glad to still have you here. And this is going to be our last session of the day. It's going to be pretty open. Don't have material to present. It's going to be mostly Q&A. If it turns into a discussion, great. We'll go till about 4 o'clock Central Time here. And to kick things off, I want to introduce our very important person in the room this afternoon, who only has about 10 minutes with us, so I wanted to give him time up front. James, take it away.
Hi, folks. It's good to see everyone on here. I know I've talked to a lot of you over the years, and it's good to see this going on without my direct involvement. Major props to the crew putting this all together. I have to run to teach a class on web scraping, actually. So I will hang out and be here for the first 10 or so minutes, and then I'll excuse myself. But I just wanted to say hi, and it's good to see you all again. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them while I'm here, but I'll probably defer to people that know more about this project now.
Yeah, and I have the first question for you, James, which is, how does it feel to see all this happening without you at the center of it all?
Feels great. I mean, I think like it's really, really good. I am really happy that the project is in a place that it is being, continued in this way. And, that's everyone in this room, but also everyone on this call and everyone that's contributed over the years kind of got us into this place where it could survive my departure from the project, or for the most part. And so it feels really good. And I'm really, really happy that everyone's using the project. And I just saw Tim's comment in the chat. Yep, my hair. That's right. Well, I've had a haircut since last time, so hopefully that doesn't mean that the health has dropped off at all. Yeah. Good to see everyone.
Awesome. I will chime in here and just say the floor is open. Jump in the chat if you want to get a question on the floor or start talking. Otherwise, if nobody's talking, jump in and we'll see what folks want to ask about.
Hey, Jesse, Jeff Pierce here. Hey, James. So the question is, so if you look at the screen scrapers today, are there any for the new districting that are 100% current? I'm wondering what the mix is between the screen scrapers, and also a specific state as an example you can check out. University of Alabama I'm sorry, not university, the Alabama State Legislature seems like almost impossible to screen scrape. I was curious, basically what percentage of states you think are screen scrapable, and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think I will turn that question over to Rylie. You want to jump on?
Can you recap real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
What was that again?
Can you say it one more time, Jeff?
Sure. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I was down. So Rylie, my question is, what percentage of states do you think you're comfortable with having screen scraping for the state legislate for the people data, right? And then as a counter example, I was looking at Alabama yesterday, and they seem to have no ability to do screen scraping because they have a lot of images and things like that. I was curious, how you would rate the mix of automated versus manual effort required.
Most of it is actual scraping. I don't know off the top of my head for Alabama. It is a very tricky UI site. I know that from like a user perspective, it's not great. But we do have scrapers running on it right now. We have the capacity to run the scrapers for people, and not entirely sure which page it scrapes, but we do have that data. I think it's very minimal on manual updates for people for the most part. We do pretty good job at being able to run most of that stuff automated, and then we have to go through and manually check that. So I'd say probably 80% is mostly scrape.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
I'll add in, Alabama's always been a problem. Alabama's one of the ones that always stood out to me whenever I was asked what the worst states were. But it is scrapable. It took some extra tricks and stuff like that. But I think pretty sure we have working scrapers from Alabama.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add in Alabama's website is like an escape room. You gotta look underneath things, inside of things.
Yeah.
It's a when you look back, it was a fun puzzle, but not at the beginning. What else do we have here? So we have a question from Spencer. Have we discussed accessibility with the various state web designers? Great question. Who wants to take that one?
I'll cover a little bit of history before I run. So years ago, almost 10 years ago now, probably, we put together a report card on kind of where the states were at. And it was a lot more work, which is why it hasn't been done since then. But we did talk to pretty much every state webmaster or whatever they're called. I think a lot of them were still called webmaster at that time. And, we gave them a lot of feedback on how accessible their sites were, because that also ties a lot into, generally an accessible site is a lot easier to scrape. And so we tried to kind of, use that as a hook as well. It's an easier sell maybe than make your site easier to scrape for us. We did have some pretty good results with that at the time. And, sites were certainly, some sites, I think maybe half a dozen or so, made actual changes as a result of that report card. But that hasn't been done in a long time. And also, things have changed a lot in the last 10 years in terms of best practices and things like that. So I think there should and probably could be some renewed effort in terms of putting a little bit more pressure on the states again and seeing what can be done. Because I actually think a lot of states have moved in the wrong direction with like JavaScript heavy pages and things like that aren't great for accessibility or scraping. But that's where things were at. That's the historical view.
Anything you want to? Yeah, and the non-historical view, I think, is that we really haven't tried to do that recently. So yeah, I agree. Probably something that somebody could take up as a project to ping and see.
I've had a couple of those discussions in the past few years and generally gotten pretty negative feedback. They treat us a little more adversarially than I think I'd like, unfortunately.
Yeah. I'll say depending on the state, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and Tim, do you want to introduce yourself really quick? I think that's the first time we've had you on the stream here, right?
Sorry, everyone. I'm Tim Showers from GovHawk. So between GovHawk is effectively another company in the same industry as Civic Eagle. We're a little bit of competitors, but not majorly. And so between me personally and our company, we have been working with open states for, 7 or 8 years now, quite a while. So if you're on this chat, you may be working on scrapers, and I promise I only wrote the good ones. So if you hate the code, it's all James' fault.
No. I wrote all the bad ones. That's why I'm out.
No, I'm kidding. And so, but we love everything Civic Eagle's been doing, and we think you guys are great stewards of the project, and we're really looking forward to continuing to contribute, because it's really silly that all these parties would be rating and maintaining their own scrapers. It really makes sense that this should just be shared data for everyone, and then what organizations want to build on top of it, they can build on top of it.
Yeah, thanks for those kind words, Tim. Totally agree. 100% agree. It gets to this question of like the digital commons, and are we each individually and collectively contributing to that, or are we just taking? And yeah, I think about the effort of everybody scraping the same sources over and over and over again. And likewise, I cringe. So I'm glad to be sharing the cost of making that commons accessible with you.
I'm gonna run, but bye. Good to see everyone.
Thanks,
go
Dan.
make 35 more contributors.
Yes.
All right, we got another question in the chat from Tim. Tim, do you want to talk about that one?
Sure. Yeah, I was just curious if you guys had anything in mind in terms of either specific data sets you were looking at adding, jurisdictions you were looking at expanding to on the digital side, or anything like that. I guess to be fair on the data sharing, on GovHawk's side, we've been looking a lot at media, particularly things around events. I think a goal for this year for us will be to try and get as much video and audio of events linked up and accessible as possible, which is quite a nasty project actually, because so many of them are in these terrible players or just sort of linked to third-party YouTubes or whatever. So that's a big thing on our radar. And then I think starting last year, we started making an effort to link bills up to legal codes where possible. So when things turn into session laws or the bills that reference laws, we really mostly worked on getting it into core and just a handful of scrapers, but I think we're going to try and expand that. So they're fairly narrow, but I think gnarly projects, but those are the main looks for us this year. I'd also be interested sort of, maybe this will dovetail with your efforts in Africa, but right now it's pretty difficult to scrape a new jurisdiction because there are a lot of assumptions made that you're picking one of the 50 states. And maybe we could make some hopefully fairly easy changes to core to make it easier to add that. And that way, you know, any expansion into other countries, into local, into, you know, whatever, school districts and water boards. I think there's a lot of places where the underlying scrape technology makes a lot of sense, but anybody who wasn't a real expert in the system would run into some roadblocks.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that stuff, Tim. Yeah, I agree about making those changes to start to open up to other jurisdictions. Very interesting that you're working on statutory ingestion. That's something we've just done experiments on internally, very, very rough stuff. So yeah, I think that would be a point of possible collaboration, because I think we definitely have interest in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Any other? Yeah, anyone want to
I was
mention?
gonna say, as for kind of like classes that we're working on, we have a goal internally to try and get data coverage in existing data types up to 100% as much as we can within the first quarter. So we're definitely leaning heavy on making sure that all of the committee scrapers do exist for all the jurisdictions that we have. And then also making sure that the data is as detailed as we can possibly get it in all the jurisdictions.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Tim, on the video, are you thinking about actually like holding the video and audio, or are you just thinking stream it through, get automated transcripts?
Lots of questions there. Yeah, obviously. I mean, I think anybody who's a geek has seen some of the stuff, either Whisper or some of the other automated transcript stuff out there. And that's very interesting to us, and I'm sure to everyone. But the first step of that is having access to the underlying data. So in my mind, you know, obviously we're not going to be downloading gigs and gigs of video with the scrapers themselves, but at least having access to where that underlying data lives and what it looks like, you know, that's sort of the first step. And then there's like, okay, is it possible to automatically transcript this or do speaker identification or all the other million cool things that are out there, but require a lot of money and investment in fancy GPUs, frankly. But even if that's not a thing, if we could get, you know, the 30 substantial number of states have audio and video links in some format, if we can make that available on the entity pages and in the API, that's still helpful to people.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great first step. Could we get the metadata pointing to those media resources? Yeah, have you looked around at all? Is it mostly, do you have a sense of like how many states have media, how many are streaming versus how many keep recordings that are? We haven't,
I need to throw an intern at that, you know, frankly, we haven't done a full survey. My sense is that it's at least half who have something. And most of them are streaming in some way, although a lot of those streams then get archived so you can get back to the player. I'd have to look up the company, but there's one company that sort of hosts that, who does 5 or 6 states and a lot of other jurisdictions around the country in terms of, you know, they're big at the local level. And so there might be a world where one utility scraper there buys us quite a bit. You know, but I don't have like good data on that. I can tell you the cases where they do offer transcripts, they're mostly garbage, like substantially worse than doing it from an automated system. So that's not too helpful. But like I said, it's something we'd like to explore this year and a place we want to kind of expand into and throw some scraper resources at.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's cool stuff. Yeah, I wonder a lot about the streaming thing and kind of how we would handle pulling that into some kind of metadata. But certainly if it's persisting in places, that's stuff we should get it.
Yeah, it seems like relatively few places have it just streams and it's gone. You know, I haven't run into too many yet. It seems like generally it's somewhere out there after it happens. So, and you know, fundamentally, it seems like all of this stuff it's all MPEGs in the end. Like you can eventually get it into FFmpeg and treat it like any other video or audio feed, but the steps to get there are pretty nasty on some of these JavaScript players. So that's, again, fairly limited research on the topic, but it's definitely an area that I think we're interested in.
Yeah, cool. Maybe we can start up S-SPAN, the state
Yeah, exactly.
cable news channel.
Yeah, we just need to find some nice nonprofit who's interested in hosting, buying us a couple of V100 GPUs for a fortune, and then really getting cranking.
Cool. Anybody else out in the audience here with ideas for new categories of data or new jurisdictions that we haven't covered yet that you think might be cool?
I'd love to see some way to take the legislation data and have it turn into like UML charts or some sort of easily, at a glance digestible information.
Yeah, do you mind expanding on that a little bit? I know I've heard I've seen UML, but I don't know it very well. So could you just expand on that idea a little bit?
So basically, it's not UML is a modeling language for showing systems and how parts interrelate. And so, a lot of people, when they learn how to code, they'll learn UML, for instance, as like, here's how the system's going to work. And to basically have a flow chart that shows you kind of like the way the legislation actually works, I think helps improve the intelligibility of, complex, if like, you look at like driving laws, and you can, if you're not looking to become a truck driver, you can discard, thousands of pages of the traffic laws and only think about the parts that, cover the motorcycle driver or whatever. And sometimes the flow chart can be an effective way to understand it.
Yeah, I got you. And you're thinking about, in your mind, you're thinking about modeling kind of the process through which bills become legislation. Like, what's the overall procedure for a given legislature?
Well, also, I guess that certainly that would certainly improve the public understanding of how the political process works, but also the bills themselves, where you can make it easier to grok the bill at a glance.
Oh, I see. So you're thinking like the content of the bill, even.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a much bigger challenge.
Yeah, it seems like an AI type problem.
Yeah, it's something worth thinking about for sure, which is it's so much time to parse and understand bills. So I agree with you on that. There's a real need there. And we don't have a pat solution for that yet, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't know. I don't really know where to get purchase on the problem. It seems like a big thing to wrap your head around, but
yeah, the problem is that you can do literally anything in a bill. There's no required structure for how to communicate your intent and context in a bill. So yeah, it's a big space. I was actually thinking about it from the other side. I kind of during Alex's presentation, I was like, yeah, well, like having even just kind of tracing out the procedural path for each state and kind of visualizing that might be of use to people. But yeah, I agree. The deeper problem of summarizing or kind of visualizing what's happening in a bill is a really big one.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else with thoughts, ideas, questions? We also have a lot of the team here. So if you're curious to check on any part of the project, we got a lot of people here to answer those questions.
I don't know if you guys are building scrapers from scratch, but I deal with a lot of local elections, and we could really use a scraper that was user changeable, so that if we got PDFs from local election offices, we could interpret them. I mean, it's very, very common for people to send us PDFs that only a human could understand. You can't export it to Excel and have it make sense.
That's tricky. Actually, it's not necessarily like a UI like scraper option, but Spatula, the framework that we've been kind of porting everything over to does have the capacity to scrape PDFs. So that is a possibility.
Yeah, the trick is how do you kind of define, what is that? How do you tell the machine what the PDF looks like, right?
Yeah.
I've seen a tool called, what's it called? Layout ML. I think it might be a proprietary tool though. That because there are companies, there's sort of like, it's in the space of like document standardization, where I've seen a lot of machine learning work done around, companies have 10 million documents they need to scan in or whatever, or even if they're just regular PDF files, and they want to extract structured data and consistent data from all those documents. So there is definitely work in that space. I just don't know if I've seen a tool that gives you that like nice non-technical user interface to say, okay, here's where I want, without having to pay a lot for that same tool. But it does seem like it seems like the open source side should be catching up with that by about now. So there might be something out there.
I mean, right now, like the for local elections, it's horrible. Like we have a lot of officials will use Excel, not in the normal Excel way, but rather as a way of creating spaces. So the data is not related in vertically or horizontally in any way whatsoever.
So they're just using Excel as like a layout program?
Yeah.
Wow. That's creative. Not helpful to us, but very creative.
Before I start, I should preface this with saying that I haven't looked at the API in 4 years. So if I ask about something that's already there, don't be surprised. I was wondering first if there might be any work on adding metadata or more metadata, I guess, to the states to express the quality of the data that's available in each one. And to give an example of that, like categorization of bills is something that's available some places and not others. Another one is in the area that Alex Garlick was talking about. The state of a bill is kind of a fuzzy concept when you try to span it across all states and all possible cases. And it might be useful to be able to know, okay, so how good is it in this particular space?
Yeah, I can take that. We definitely don't have the metadata on that completely. We don't have a place that is publicly tracking that. I've tried to get into trying to get like some tables going about like that data coverage stuff. I've gotten some, but not complete. So I think it's something that we could definitely do. We just don't have it right now. But I think that would be good to have public for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we've done that. That data quality work privately, obviously, right? Because we want to make sure what we're delivering is accurate. But yeah, we haven't. I don't think we've really had a conversation about like turning that outward and making kind of a public and transparent scorecard. But yeah, I think that could be a cool evolution. So thanks for the idea, Ed.
Yeah, I think GovHawk probably is in the same boat. We have some of that internally, scored up in various Excel spreadsheets, but not in an obvious place. So if you guys decide to move forward on that, let me know. And I mean, it'd be nice to just write something that queries the database in the cases where that's, things like tags where we can quickly tell if we have it for the most recent session or not. Might be useful for us too if some feature stops working sort of quietly to make sure we catch it. Just one more QA layer.
Yeah, right on.
Even just knowing when it was last refreshed would be good, or when it was last scraped would be good.
We do have that part on metadata on most of the data types. So there's usually a created at or updated at field.
Very cool. Any other questions, thoughts, issues that you want to bring up before the end of the day here? All right, stack looks clear. Obviously, don't hesitate to keep thinking and share stuff in that Matrix chat space, the Summit chat space. But otherwise, we're going to wrap things up for today. It's been a great day of talks. Really appreciate the awesome and engaged audiences. Thanks y'all for coming. Really appreciate our special guests, our hosts, everybody who's helped be on camera and host this event today. Yeah, it just feels really great to have kind of like the next step forward and a little bit more excitement, a little bit more energy coming in as we reach out to the community here. So yeah, thank you so much. Tomorrow is going to be our first day of hackathon sessions. And to reiterate that, we're going to open doors physically here at 9 a.m. Virtually, we'll be, kind of starting to watch the chat, and encourage anyone who's going to participate in that. If you are thinking like, hey, I want to pursue an idea or a project with other people, get on that Miro board and post some information on your idea and how to connect with you. If you are just looking to kind of learn and play along, especially if you're on that beginner track, take a look at the agenda document. There's some links there to introductory resources that might help get you started. And we'll see you tomorrow or Saturday to hack on some code. All right, everybody. Appreciate your time and see you soon.